Brought to you by the Astro Youth House chapter from STEM Arts Lab, Space on Earth is a student-led podcast that inspires listeners who are curious about space to explore the wonders of the universe through the voices of young thinkers, creators, and dreamers.
Each episode blends personal curiosity with scientific discovery, from the mysterious depths of black holes to the practical impacts of space on Earth, like GPS, climate science, and medicine.
Hosted by STEM Arts students from Taos, New Mexico, this podcast draws connections between space, art, and science, how these things all impact us here on Earth, and their meaning to humanity.
You'll hear raw, insightful conversations about topics like light pollution, the overview effect, lunar exploration, and the societal impact of the space race.
Whether you're into exoplanets, dark energy, or just stargazing from your backyard, Space on Earth makes space personal, accessible, and inspiring. We believe that space isn't just for astronauts and scientists, it's for everyone.
Join us on this adventure as we explore the cosmos from Earth, one story at a time.
Special thanks to the Lore Foundation for helping launch this podcast.
Hi, my name is Heidi Rose. Welcome back to Space on Earth. Today we're going to be doing an interview with Arwen Hubbard, along with our newest host, Lacey Collins. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lacey. I'm so excited to be here, so excited to learn more, and so excited to interview all kinds of people.
Hi, guys. I am one of our hosts today. My name is Shaylee. We are going to be interviewing Arwen Hubbard. I know we've mentioned her a little bit on this podcast already, but we have never done a formal interview. Arwen, how do you feel about being interviewed today?
I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me on. So I've been in the background, listening, cheering you on. It's nice to be talking today. I'm excited to talk about science communication, specifically space communication with you all, and really excited to get into this interview. And Lacey, I'm so happy to meet you and also hear about what you're interested in space and science and all of that.
Yes, I'm quite interested in everything.
I mean, there's so much to space, right? How do you choose just one thing?
I know, right? Like talking about light pollution and how that affects Earth. Is that something I can talk about?
Yeah, we've done an episode on that before, actually.
Yeah. And I know STEM Arts is going to be doing a lot more related to that this year. It sounds to me like some of the connection between space and Earth is interesting to you.
Yes.
Nice.
I'm quite interested in about how Earth and space are connected, about light pollution, and how that really affects our Earth. I'm also quite interested in solar flares, how everything works together, how our orbit and gravity all works together.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see everything that you bring to the podcast. So, yeah, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Arwen.
Yeah, and for those of you who have not listened to our previous episodes, Arwen is our instructor here for the Space on Earth podcast. She is a NASA Solar System ambassador, as well as a space science educator and ecologist who holds undergraduate degrees in resource management and agricultural ecology, as well as a master's of science in space studies with the focus on planetary science. Do you want to go ahead and jump into the questions that we have for Arwen?
Sure. One of my first questions is, Arwen, why do you think science communication matters?
So science communication, the role of a science communicator is to make science and the things that we're learning through science, how science works as a process, make those things accessible to everybody. So their job is to look at, what are the scientists doing and how do we communicate that in a way that everybody's going to understand or makes it easier to involve everybody. And science touches everything about our lives on a really practical level. I mean, what we're doing right now, we are on Zoom and we're talking to each other from, we're kind of in the same part of the world, but we're miles and miles apart. And the folks listening now, you're listening after we recorded this, who knows where you are? You could be driving in a car, flying in a plane, doing all of these things. And everything about our lives are impacted by science. But also, we learn so much about ourselves. It's amazing. There's this whole universe out there and inside of us that we're part of. The science communicator's job is to tie that all together, to bring everybody into that. So, of course, I'm a little biased. I think it's one of the most amazing things to be involved in.
Great. Thank you for answering that question, Arwen. That was a really great answer.
What's your favorite part about science communications?
Well, I think all of it. The reason is there's so many different components to it, right? So, on the one hand, you get to learn about and feel really involved with the discoveries as they're happening. So, I get to follow missions that are happening, get to be constantly reading the new papers that are coming out and checking out conferences and just getting to feel a part of a lot of things at once, which I think for me, that's part of the joy of it. But the other part is that every time I'm talking with somebody new about it, whether I'm working with a group of students or doing a talk, it's like getting to share that again for the first time. Every time I'm sharing it and seeing other people learning about it, being excited about it, we're sharing in that excitement together and discovery together. So it really is about the connection with people and the discovery around it. And that's a lot of what you all have been doing in this podcast, which has been really cool to see that grow as you're getting to discover different topics and reach out and talk with scientists and engineers and be a part of that as well. So I don't know if that kind of speaks to what you were wondering about, Lacey.
Yes, it does. I was just wondering how it brings the community together. And that seems like a wonderful part about science communications.
Absolutely. Yeah, because communication and community, they're so tied together. And of course, there are some forms of science communication where you maybe don't have as much direct interaction, like writing articles or script writing, where you don't have the immediate feedback that you might when you're interacting with someone in person. But I find that those are also rewarding in their own way because those are a little bit more careful and thoughtful, and you get to really dig into that material on a deeper level than you do when it's face to face because of the time that you get to invest in it.
Yes, that makes sense, Arwen. That's quite a beautiful part about it, too.
How does working with younger adults and children differ? Because I know you work a lot with STEM arts, and STEM arts is heavily youth-based. What are the differences between science communications within youth and maybe like older people?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. My philosophy on that is to try to just meet people where they're at and not really go, oh, well, this person is an adult and this person's a teen or this person's a child. Just hear a little bit from them first and see what are they interested in and what is their knowledge base, and meet them wherever they are. Because some of the most absolutely knowledgeable, brilliant future space scientists I've ever met have been 8. And they've absolutely blown me out of the water. I'm like, okay, well, I've got something to learn from you. You know about this particular star cluster and that, and you're calculating the gravitational attraction between these two bodies. Like, wow. And then also there will be people that you meet who, they're 80 and they've never heard of any of this before and they're just curious. So I try to meet people as people rather than as categories. That being said, though, I also have to keep in mind that there's going to be generally a different amount of awareness of topics that people are going to have. So, if I'm talking to someone who's 80, I can generally assume they knew what the Cold War was and the space race, where maybe my 8-year-old, I'd have to go, okay, maybe I need a little bit of background here first. And then you have to decide, how much time do we spend on that background? How important is it to explain the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union for what we're talking about? That's that kind of a fun dance that comes from experience. The more you do it, the more you get a feel for how much to communicate, how much not. And of course, the medium changes it as well, right? Do you have the opportunity to get into that? Or is this a question in a 30-minute lecture where you've got 4 minutes for question and answer at the end? So I really like that question, thinking about how do we communicate with different age groups, different people. But I have to say, if I have to choose a favorite, probably teens and young adults, because they're able to grasp all of these really complex ideas, but they haven't gotten set in their way, locked into this one way of viewing the world yet. Like everything is still kind of new, and they're willing to explore and experiment. It makes it so much more exciting, I think.
You gave an amazing answer to that question, Arwen. Thank you.
So you talked about how at different ages, people know different information, obviously, because throughout life, you learn more information about everything. So I'm curious, what do you think is the hardest concept in space science to explain simply to every age? Not just specifically like first graders or college students, like overall, what's the hardest to explain?
Wow, I'm gonna have to think about that one. That's tricky. I think maybe not to explain, but to really understand is how much we don't know. So I think we're used to, especially in the 21st century, where we all have computers and Wikipedia and AI, and we carry around these information devices in our pockets where we can just look anything up. And we're so used to getting answers so quickly. But really, we're only even beginning to scratch the surface on, what even exists in our solar system. And the way that we figure things out, like what is the mass of Neptune, or what's the interior structure of that? In fact, recently that was even just called into question, where we've thought for decades that we've known what was inside Neptune and Uranus and what their structure is. And some scientists came back, reevaluated some of the data we had, ran some different models, and found that we can actually come up with some very different interior structures than we thought. So we just don't know whether that's right or not, and what else is out there. But this is also a really tricky topic because you have to balance when saying how much we don't know with helping people understand that science isn't just guessing, because we don't know a lot, but there are things that we actually have very reasonable and well thought out reasons to believe that the Earth is in fact round, that the moon is, another body, that the sun is like, and what the mass of the sun. We have ways to figure these out, and it's not a random process just because we have uncertainty. There are things we have good reason to believe. So maybe somewhere in that tension, I think, is maybe the trickiest place to communicate, to help people understand. And as always, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. You have to read who's your audience in that moment, and what are the questions that they're looking for, what are the answers that they're trying to explore. Yeah, it's a brilliant question.
In your lifetime, has something been discovered that we didn't know about before that you found out about? What was your experience finding out about that? Because you kind of talked about how we don't know the answer to things, but now we have different resources.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many amazing things that we've discovered in every different field. So many new discoveries being made. Of course, space is my main focus. I think that I have to say that probably the New Horizons mission is the one that I think is really special to me. New Horizons was a mission that went to Pluto. And it went to Pluto. Our best images were just some fuzzy few pixels of the planet. We couldn't see it very clearly. And a lot of people thought this would be kind of like a cold, dead world, right? It was going to be craters. We kind of knew the color. We knew it was like this reddish, the other red planet, right? And so we know why, Mars from its composition is very different, but we weren't expecting what we saw. And it was, for me, being too young to have been, I guess I was technically alive when Voyager went by Neptune, but not old enough to remember anything. But I certainly wasn't old enough for any of the other first time, something to Mars or the first time to Jupiter, any of that. So Pluto for me was the first time that I got to be involved. I was not on the team. I was way too young, but to feel like I was involved in this exploration. And what we saw completely shook our understanding of how complex a world could be. We saw glaciers and ice volcanoes and active geology and all of these things that were just completely new. And so I remember watching the images come back and being released with the whole world just an absolute awe of that. And that was not long ago. That was like 10 years ago at this point. And since then, what we understand could be possible on these worlds has completely changed. Just such a short period of time. So I always love talking about Pluto because of that emotional connection for me. And I hope that I get to be involved with sharing that with people and for future missions that are going to happen, because there's so much more to explore and so many missions that are happening that teach us about ourselves, about Earth and space, how those two things aren't really as separate as we often think they are. So I don't know if that speaks a little bit to what you were wondering about.
How much you like talking about Pluto. I just felt like your overall answer towards this last question felt more personal towards you. So like going off of that, what would you say is your favorite topic to communicate to audiences? Like, is there a specific topic that you like to talk about more?
Yeah, I mean, the planetary science side of things. I love everything space, but planetary science is my background there. But I kind of was touching on this a little bit in that the connection between space and Earth, where I really love talking about how space is nature. We often think about space as like, oh, it's this outside other place. And like sometimes in our language, we'll say here in real life, instead of thinking that like the pictures of the nebulae are real, that everything that we see happening out there is the same processes, the same things that are happening here. So I really love thinking about space and the places in space as actual places and tying that back down to here, to Earth. And personally, I really love tying that to the locations that we are here on Earth. I know a lot of us here are New Mexicans, and we have places here that are just so amazing, valuable for their own selves, but also just amazing analogs for what we do see in other places. Our dune fields and craters and our lava and like all of these things that are the same thing that we see, on Titan, and the same thing that we see on the moon and Mars and Pluto. And it's right here, and we're part of that. So I think if I could talk about that all the time, that's what I do. And that's actually one of the great things about being a science communicator is that you pretty much do get to do that, right? You do get to go, okay, there's so much science to discover. There's so much science to talk about. And there's so many people. And that's another thing that's different about science communication today than maybe it was 40 years ago or 60 years ago. We have the internet now, and you can connect with anyone pretty much anywhere in the world. And so there's enough people that if you are interested in something like science communication as a career, you can support yourself with that. And you don't have to be in the major population centers. And you don't have to be in what were traditionally the space places. Like you don't have to move to like Houston or Pasadena or, great places, but you don't have to be there. You can be anywhere. And, New Mexico is a great place to be for all of that.
That is an amazing answer. I like how you touched on how we don't need all of these really specific requirements to be a space communicator. The way you can start off is really simple. You don't have to be this huge, big thing. And I think that's really inspiring.
Since there is so much information online from people sharing all around the world, do you think there is a lot of misinformation out there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's one of the tricky things. The availability of information and the internet is kind of double-edged, right? You can get a lot of people sharing information and ideas can spread really quickly. I tend to try and give people the benefit of the doubt. I think most of the time when ideas spread that are incorrect, when it comes to science, a lot of times those are just because there is a misunderstanding, right? Somebody doesn't understand something about it. I mean, I think there's definitely trolls out there, right? I think a lot of your like people who supposedly think the moon landing was a hoax and that sort of thing. I think for the most part, most of those are trolls. There certainly may be some people who actually believe that. But a lot of the other ideas spread just because we live in this world where we're throwing information around really quickly. We don't always stop to really think about things and to dive deep into it. And there's a lot of things about space that aren't very intuitive. When you start thinking about things like gravity and the scale, it's just different than what we're used to on Earth. So I think that as communicators, we have a responsibility to slow down and really think about what we are communicating and how we want to communicate that, and to double check our information. Because there's a lot of pressure, especially when you're doing things on short media platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels, where there's pressure for your material to be seen. It's got to be snappy, it's got to be controversial, it's got to be all of that. But we got to slow down sometimes and go, okay, what am I doing? Is this accurate? Did I make a mistake? Do I need to correct the mistake that I made? Because we all make mistakes, right? Even if it's you are the number one expert on something in the world, we're human. So I think there's a process of needing to self-reflect. And I think that goes beyond just science communication. But I think that in communication, anywhere in the media, we have an extra responsibility because what we're saying is influencing other people, right? We are an authority in these areas. People sometimes listen because they think, oh, well, Arwen, she knows what she's talking about, right? But I can make mistakes and accidentally spread ideas. So that element of responsibility is really important. So I love that you're asking about that because it's such a big topic. It extends beyond just science communication to any communication, really. Anytime we're interacting with a lot of people, it goes back to that idea of community we started the conversation with.
Thank you. I completely agree. I believe everyone should just slow down and think about what they're putting out into the world.
Have you learned any other skills that could be applied elsewhere?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We kind of jumped right into the science communication. I didn't talk about my background before. So before going into space, my background's actually ecology. And a lot of times people look at that and they're like, ecology and space? Like, people see these as two separate things. Even when you start talking about space, people go, shouldn't we fix all our problems here on Earth first? Aren't we messing up all of Earth's ecosystems? Shouldn't we take care of that before we go to space? You can see from that conflict that people often see between space and ecology. But coming from ecology, it helped me to see the systems part of everything, right? That all of this is related. I think that helped me understand space more. But space, all those sorts of things definitely helped me with understanding some of the technology of daily life better. But the communication part, bringing that back to how do you communicate with people? There's so many skills that have come out of that. One of the things about careers is that they rarely go the way you plan. People are like, oh, yes, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And then you're like, oh, I want to be a vet, or I want to be this or that. Well, actually, most people don't pick the one thing that they want to be and go on this one path that leads them to that thing that they then do for 60 years and then retire, right? Like, life doesn't actually work that way. And so maybe there's a few people out there, but really you find something that is interesting, and it opens up these other things that you wouldn't have thought. So for me, with the communication, that got me into teaching, and that got me into writing and podcasting. Like, they each led from one place to another, and those skills all built on each other that I could then use in other places that I never would have thought, like, oh, how am I doing this? So I think that, and I think this isn't with science communication, but it's really with anything that you choose, that it's going to be connected to all kinds of things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Is there anything specifically that has happened in your life that you think led you to where you are now regarding career, interests, hobbies, specifically for space? Do you think there was something that happened in your life that you were like, wow, I want to go into this? Or did
Yeah,
it just happen?
I'm smiling as you ask that, because I think the answer is all of it, right? Like, that's how life kind of is. For me, it started really young. I mentioned before, I'm from New Mexico, and some of my earliest memories are sitting outside on the roof deck. My dad had these folding chairs you put up on the roof deck. And in retrospect, maybe that wasn't the safest thing to do, Dad. We would climb up these ladders, and I was pretty little, so he'd let his little 3-year-old climb up the ladder onto the roof deck. I would sit on his lap, and we'd look up at the sky. And, we're pretty far from any town, about an hour from Santa Fe, right? And so the sky would be just so beautiful, just like so clear and so dark. And I could see the Milky Way just beautifully, perfectly, with like you could even see kind of the purples of it. And I remember I'd like sit up there, and I was so proud that I was allowed to go up and be up there with him, because I had to be quiet. And from my perspective, the quiet lasted forever. I'm sure there was like 5 minutes that he was making me be quiet for, but it felt like forever. And I'd look at like, can I fit more stars there? And I'd ask him, he'd tell me stories, because he was growing up during the space race. So he remembers the first time people got into space and feeling absolutely crushed that the Soviets got there first. Like, oh, it wasn't us, the Soviets did, and all of that. So that was a big part of my upbringing. And of course, I grew up on Star Trek and things like that. Definitely influenced me. I read the Red Mars series by Kim Stanley Robinson when I was like, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. That influenced me as well, too. But I think just lots of little things. And again, New Mexico is such a great place for it, because we have access to the skies. Even in the city, our cities aren't that big, so we can still see the sky. We've got everything here, White Sands, Spaceport, and the labs that are involved. It's a place where there's space all around us, from both the sky perspective and that like personal relationship perspective, but also like the tech side, the science side is all here as well. Does that speak a little bit to what you were wondering about, Heidi Rose?
That answered the question wonderfully. Thank you, Arwen.
Do you have a similar take on the sky, or has it been different for you?
I had a similar experience when I was younger. We would go up on the roof, except we didn't have chairs. We would just sit on the roof. We lived in the city, so we couldn't really see anything, but I used to go camping a lot when I was younger. So we would go these places where there wasn't really any light pollution, like very much in the forest, and you could see the whole Milky Way. Growing up in the city, you see a couple stars, and that's fascinating. But then when you actually go and see somewhere where there's not any light pollution, which we actually talked about in another episode, which is really interesting, it changes your perspective entirely. I think I also grew up talking a lot about space, both in school and with my parents. I was very lucky for that, but I think that also gave me a lot of information about space, and that helped with my interests currently.
Yeah, oh, I love that. That's interesting. So you had that real big shift between city sky and then the camping sky. Lacey, what about
Yes.
you? Did you grow up with the sky? Or is that something that you didn't really discover until later?
I grew up with the sky. I remember when I was around 5 or 6, we'd always go outside, sit on some lawn chairs and have a blanket and just look up at the sky for hours. It was so beautiful. I just love seeing all the shooting stars, and Space has always been pretty involved in my life. I had a teacher who really loved space, and that's all she would really talk about. That really influenced me to join STEM arts and join this podcast because I just love space so much.
Oh, I love to hear that. Yeah, it seems like it makes such a difference when you have somebody sharing that passion with you. Like you were saying, like your teacher, or for me, with my dad. That's one of the things I hope with science communication is to be able to, maybe be that for someone else. What about you, Shaylee? Did you have a connection with the sky or the concept of space?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like my experience is the inverse of Hattie's. I grew up in a place where like there is almost no light pollution, so like I was always able to look up at the stars. Once I came over to the city for college, there was a lot more light pollution. I gained a newfound sense of appreciation for the stars once I went to college. But I feel like overall, space and science, especially like stars and constellations, I remember always being able to look up and they were always there. Now that I'm in the city, it's different. And I learned so much about light pollution, like gaining that newfound sense of appreciation for clear skies and dark skies has made me realize how much of a problem light pollution is.
What advice would you give to students who want a career in space science or communication?
Oh, this is great. I think really to start, and this is one of these really cool things, you don't have to get all these credentials. Those can be nice, but really what makes you a communicator is that you're communicating. And we've all got access to these tools, right? I bet in every one of your back pockets right now, there is a phone with an amazing camera, and you have access to thousands upon thousands of papers. If you're starting from a point where you're younger, you've got this great advantage that people are excited to talk to the youth, right? The youth with a capital Y, where you have access to scientists who are like, yeah, I remember being your age. Of course I want to talk to you. So what you guys are doing right now with this podcast is exactly what I say. Do something like this. Create a channel. Start writing scripts, write blogs, do things like that, and just actually get involved and practice. And if you do want to go and get a degree in something, then that is a way to support what you're doing, to amplify what you're doing. But to be a communicator, you just do it. Nobody has to give you their stamp of approval or a paper or something like that. So that's what I say. Just start. You guys have already done that, which is amazing.
Lacey,
Thank you so much for joining us, Arwen. It was so exciting to hear all your thoughts and all your feelings about science communication. I really loved when we dove deeper into light pollution and all the things to enjoy about science communication.
Thank you. This is really cool. I really enjoyed getting to do this with all of you. I'm just so proud of what you guys are doing. What you're doing is so amazing. And it's really an honor to get to watch you guys and help mentor and be a part of it. So thank you for involving me.
thank you as well, Arwen. And thank you, Lacey, for attending with us today. We hope to see more of you on the podcast soon. Arwen, I'm so glad that we got to interview you today and learn more about your career and your thoughts about everything.
Thank you, Arwen, for allowing us to interview you. I'm glad we're finally able to see you on this side of the podcast, being able to ask you all of our questions. Yeah, and with that, thank you to everyone who is listening. I'm Shaylee.
I'm Heidi Rose.
And I'm Lacey.
And we'll see you next time.